Hello, and welcome to a special edition of Ethanol Producer Magazine podcast. I am your host, Katie Schroeder, Contributions Editor with Ethanol Producer Magazine. Today we are hearing a panel preview for this year's upcoming Fuel Ethanol Workshop. This year, Track 4 will explore leadership and financial management. I have with me today Tony Miller, Principal in Weaver Energy's Compliance Services Division. He will be presenting in a panel titled Preparing for Inspections and Enforcement Across Fuel Programs, which is happening at 1 p.m. on Wednesday, June 3rd at FEW. Tony's presentation is titled D3 RINs and EPA Enforcement, Navigating Heightened Scrutiny. Welcome to the show, Tony. I'm excited to learn more about this very timely topic.
Thank you, Katie. I really appreciate you all having me on and happy to share any insights that I can with any of the listeners.
Awesome. So just to get started, could you introduce yourself and share a little bit about what Weaver is all about?
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you, Katie. So I am a licensed chemical professional engineer, been with Weaver for about 3 years. Prior to joining Weaver, I was at EPA for over 16 years. During that time, I was a Credentialed Clean Air Act inspector and conducted many inspections. Prior to leaving EPA, I was in charge of the team that was enforcing all fuel regulations, gasoline, diesel, and renewable fuels. And also, while I was at EPA prior to joining the enforcement group, I actually led the development of the EPA Moderated Transaction System, EMTS, for all of the RIN transactions in the RFS program. In addition to that, I testified in 4 criminal RFS trials and deposed 3 times in 1 civil enforcement litigation. So a lot of background, especially in the RFS side and the EPA side. And within Weaver, I bring that expertise to Weaver's renewable fuel standard services, particularly the QAP, the Quality Assurance Plan. Weaver is one of the largest verifiers of QAP at over 75% of all D3 RINs that were generated. We also provide engineering review services, efficient producer petition process, EP3 pathway support. We are a 45Z certification provider. We do LCFS consulting or validation verification, Canadian CFR consulting, Clean Counts IRE verification services. That is specific within the Energy Compliance Services Group, but Weaver itself is a full-service accounting firm with tax audit and advisory services. So we have a lot of services offerings, and particularly those that can really be of assistance to ethanol producers.
Awesome. So what kind of led you to choose this topic on D3 RINs and EPA enforcement?
Absolutely. Yes. In that time, I was a Credentialed Clean Air Act inspector. I conducted inspections of terminals, retail stations, refineries. I worked on engines, vehicle fleets, working on vehicle tampering, but in most particular, and for the listeners here, conducted numerous inspections of renewable fuel facilities, really across the entire renewable fuel standard program. And so having been on the other side, realizing also that this industry in particular may not really be as in tune to what might happen during an EPA inspection, just really saw a knowledge gap and really wanted to make sure I could provide any knowledge ahead of time if any of the producers out there were to have an EPA inspection, and to be able to assist and kind of take out some of the unknown, because I know there's always going to be potentially fear of the unknown. So the more I can help with getting everyone to kind of get a baseline, understanding what may occur, I think that would help if this type of effort might come from EPA to one of the producers out there.
I'm really curious, how do D3 RINs currently play into the ethanol production landscape from your perspective?
Yeah, so it's been a little over 2 years now since the really exponential growth of ethanol producers, starting with the D3 RINs in the in situ processing, either from corn kernel fiber or grain sorghum fiber. And EPA commonly, when new programs start, won't necessarily begin enforcement right away. They let the program kind of come to fruition and allow producers that have questions, or if there is any other interpretation they need to provide, to allow those to kind of come through, people to make corrections, kind of go through the process. But it's been about 2 years. And last I checked, I think there's only about 60-ish ethanol facilities that have yet to apply for and obtain a D3 pathway. So there aren't that many left there anymore. So this
Wow.
is really the time, yeah, when enforcement comes into play and wants to make sure there's a level playing field. Everyone understands the rules, follows the rules, and if there is any kind of widespread issues, that they address those early in the program rather than letting them getting out of control way down the line and really looking into that in particular.
Got it. Got it. So I'm curious, what does EPA's activity currently look like in this area, and how long do you expect it to continue?
Yeah, so a little bit more about my background too. While I was at EPA, I did lead the team that was responsible for actual enforcement of all fuel regulations, gasoline, diesel, and renewable fuels. So not only was I conducting inspections, I actually led the team of attorneys and engineers that would conduct the inspections, but also take the cases in the civil side for those enforcement actions if there were any violations. And so this is really more from my knowledge of what I would have expected if I were still at EPA. And right now, I do know and I do have knowledge that there are currently inspections that have occurred in the last month of ethanol facilities, particularly on this topic. So I chose this topic even before that had occurred and that knowledge, but I was anticipating this to occur because it's been about that time as I previously discussed. So it's happening. And that is something that I think everyone should be aware of because really EPA is going to be looking at this sector most likely for the next near term. The other programs that have just recently started about a year ago, they probably won't look into those for at least another year. But it also really depends on how long they're going to be active here, on what they find. If they find widespread issues, they might broaden their search to see how much more widespread they think that that could be.
Oh, I see. I see. That makes a lot of sense. If I was an ethanol producer, I think one question that would come to mind for me is, are there any key differences between a D3 RIN compliance versus D6 RIN compliance that really stand out to you so far?
Absolutely. Historically, it's been all D6. A lot of the ethanol facilities are just grandfathered. Some might have the EP3, the efficient producer petition process pathway, where they can generate above their grandfather baseline volume. Some producers might have a qualifying pathway, and it's really just been all D6. And it's been pretty easy to navigate that. If there are exports of ethanol, you just retire the D6. But when you have the D3, there is a big difference. There is this ability to essentially accumulate D3 gallons prior to actually RIN generation per EPA's allowance. And within that construct, you really have to track a lot of detail. You have to track inventories of your physical gallons. You have to track production daily. You have to track shipments daily. You have to ensure that any kind of non-qualifying ethanol that left the facility doesn't go towards your D3 accumulation. For example, undenatured sales out or non-qualifying uses. So there is a lot to really take into account, and you really have to understand all of those nuances. It seems straightforward, but then once you get into the detail, or if you are a facility that engages in other sorts of aspects, like undenatured sales, then it can be very complex quickly. So it's one of those where you really have to be considerate of what's going on with the D3 and D6s, and there are a lot of differences.
Awesome. Okay, well, thank you for kind of giving us a little sneak peek. What is kind of your main message to producers in anticipation of coming to this panel? What's like the key takeaway or your selling point for this particular presentation that you would want to communicate to our listeners?
Absolutely. I think the biggest thing I hope everyone takes away from my presentation is to be audit ready. EPA inspections can seem scary, or any federal agency inspections can seem scary. They have to be taken seriously, but taking that unknown out of it and understanding what you might need to do to be audit ready is really important. As we help our QAP clients be audit ready. I want everyone out there to just be ready for it. We're happy to help however we can at Weaver, but the more knowledge I can impart to everybody and to understand what to expect, I think that'll go a long way. And just really to be prepared when or if you get that inspection letter from EPA or if they show up unannounced. It's really important to ensure that you can be efficient, but also the more prepared you are, the less likely you are to have follow-up questions from EPA, have less interruptions from their inspection time frame, or to just be able to avoid any kind of potential pitfalls or enforcement actions if something's wrong. So the more prepared you are, the more you will be ready for this if that time comes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for giving us a sneak peek, Tony. As kind of a last fun question, I'm curious kind of what are you looking forward to at this year's FEW?
I think every time I go to FEW, one of my biggest things that I love is the energy and the engagement. One of my first FEW times I attended, I was also speaking. I had the first panel on the first day. And at that time, it was a Monday morning. And I was expecting room to be maybe a quarter full and really low engagement. The room was packed, standing room only, and the engagement was just overwhelming to me. And it was amazing. So the energy and the engagement from everyone that attends, it's why I keep coming back.
We're excited about your panel and your presentation and to hear the full details at FEW. And just for our listeners, if you want to catch Tony's presentation in full, it will be on the Preparing for Inspections and Enforcement Across Fuel Programs panel at 1 p.m. on Wednesday, June 3rd. We hope to see you there, and feel free to go to few.bbiconferences.com to see the full agenda, register, and learn more. Hope to see you all there.